Hello friends, welcome to another episode of Blossoms and Bourbon. My name is Mark, I'm the owner here at Creative Occasions, and it's a pleasure to welcome you to my workroom. So the backstory on today's episode is, when I did that episode with the plant groupings in the larger container where we left them individually, a great many people reached out to me and said, well, couldn't you just go ahead and plant them? You know, use dirt and plant them in the same container. You certainly can. And so that kind of led to a conversation with another viewer, Kristen. Thank you, Kristen, who shared with me that she has a collection of vintage containers, old pottery containers. This is one of them. And I have a couple more behind me that I'll be pulling up to show you in just a second. And she said, you know, I would be glad for you to use those sometime. So I thought, well, what a perfect opportunity to pull in Kristen's containers and then to actually show a planting for something that would be used indoors. This is definitely an indoor kind of planter we're going to do. So first thing is do some research about what kind of light you have in your home. Do you have bright light with lots of windows? Do you live in a cave so you don't have a lot of light? What exactly is the scenario so that you're choosing plants that are appropriate to that kind of growing environment? And then if you're going to have more than one plant in a container, you need to make sure that they're sort of cohabitable, you know, that they're going to get along together and have the same kind of requirements. As you'll see in just a second, one of the gardens that I put together specifically is all succulents. And that's because they all live well together. They all require the same kind of thing. These two plants are very similar in that respect, in that they have similar growth requirements. They don't take a lot of light. They function well in low light conditions, as long as it's sort of bright indirect light. So no western exposure, no hot sun. Northeast exposure is great. And let's talk about how we put those together. Because these containers, lovely as they are, do not have drainage holes. So one of the things that we have to be sure that we're careful about is that we're not letting the roots of the plant sit in water. And when you water in a container that doesn't have a drainage hole, there's nowhere for it to go, so it's just going to collect in the bottom, and you're going to create a little pool there. So what we're going to do is just take some rocks and add kind of a layer of what's going to be drainage, a place where the water can collect at the bottom, but yet it's not going to allow the roots to go down and just sit in the water. So that's going to be the first step. I will also tell you that Kristen, she said when she was texting me back and forth about the containers, she said they're kind of small. And so I ordered small plants thinking that I had done the right thing, and they really are small. So some of these plants look like they may just take right over. But anyway, what we're going to do is, typically I would water the plant before we take it out of the container that it came in. And you're just going to kind of squeeze on it and make sure that it's kind of loosened up a little bit so that that root ball, if there is a root ball inside there, is going to come out easily. Tip it over on its side, just give it a little spin and pull it right out. You can see that there's a root structure already growing around the outside edge of this pot. And because I know we're going in a fairly small space, I'm going to kind of move that around a bit to get some of that loose soil out. And don't worry, we're going to add some more soil to it, so it's not like that's going to hurt the plant or anything. This one looks a little floppy, so I'm going to take him off. He can go in his own container. He's got roots. He'll be happy somewhere else. All right, so we're just going to kind of tuck that in right on the side. This pothos plant, and that's what this is called, is a pothos. I believe this variety is called Neon. And it has these long running tendrils. These plants can live for years, so it's a great plant to start with if you're doing this for the first time. If you're kind of a newbie with plants, get a pothos. They're great. If they get too long and runny, you simply take these little tendrils at the joint, break them off. That will kind of control the length of it. It'll help the plant kind of thicken up in the body of the plant, so it'll be super happy. So we're going to do the same thing with this guy. So we're going to just kind of, again, loosen the soil up. You can see that there are roots on the bottom of this. And because this already has a shape that's kind of going elongated in the other direction, I'm going to kind of make it look like that so that it kind of follows the shape of the container. Plant them so that they are kind of neighbors, but going in the opposite direction. Now, if you need extra soil, just a regular potting soil mix will work just fine for this. But because we have this extra dirt that came off the plants that where they were grown, I'm just going to fill in with that. And just kind of tuck it right around the edge. Tamp it in a little bit. We want to make sure that it's nice and secure. You do want to be somewhat gentle because you're kind of putting the plant in a new environment. It's like when you move into a new house, you know, kind of have to adjust a little bit. Now, if you want to, you can certainly finish the soil level with this with something more decorative, like moss. You could do, you'll see in a second with the one with the succulents, I put rocks around it. I think honestly for this purpose, we're going to leave this one plain. I have tamped those down pretty well. And one thing that I like to be sure to do also is to leave a little space right around the rim so that when we're watering it, the water doesn't run right off the soil and out the side of the container. Okay, so there's a little rim down in there so that when the water goes in, it's going to stay inside the container. You can see a little bit better there on the front. But that's going to really help make the whole watering process much easier, especially because these are going to be inside your home. So really, that is pretty much the process. It's very easy. If you have a larger container, then you can certainly add more plants to it. You don't want to get them too crowded because you do want them to have room to expand and to grow and get happy with their new neighbors. So just wipe a little bit of that residual soil off, and there we have it. I think they're going to be nice and happy in there. And Kristen, you're going to be the recipient of these plants as a way of saying our showing appreciation for letting us use your containers. Let's look at a couple of other containers that she let us use. This is the one I mentioned to you that has the succulents. And I just think that's really a cool, interesting look. I like the fact that there's different textures with all the succulents. Succulents don't require a lot of water. In fact, they like to be ignored. So this is a pretty easy one for a beginner starting out with plants in their home. The shape of this container is amazing. It's got these really cool sort of mid-century angles to it. So it's really, really a lot of fun. You can see here where I've put the rocks on the soil level just to kind of make it kind of have a decorative element. And that really is all it is decorative. It can hold the soil in place, but it's really primarily for decoration. And then when I saw this planter, I thought, my gosh, that is just the coolest thing. Love the color, just absolutely love the color of this. And that sort of floral shape that it has, those little fluted rim right around the top. And it reminded me of the growth pattern of the leaves on an African violet. So I thought, well, what better plant to put in here than an African violet, right? Furthermore, going back to our color theories, we're kind of doing analogous colors here because we have colors that are neighbors on the color wheel, greens and blue purples. So it was just a natural choice to use that little African violet in there. Let's talk about care and maintenance. Again, because you've done your due diligence and your research on the types of plants you're using, you know how much water they take, you know that, with each grouping, it's going to require a different level. African violets, for instance, require a fair amount of water, but because, again, there's no drainage, you want to be careful about overwatering. Also with African violets, don't get water on the leaves. These leaves have these very fine, hair-like textured, fuzzy surface to them. And if you get water on them, it'll spot the leaf. And it's not going to be so bad for the plant, but it's just unattractive. So when you're watering, just be sure that you go in from the side and put the spout of your watering can or whatever in there. Again, I've left that space for the water to go around the rim of the container, and it'll be nice and happy there. A good way to check water level in any kind of plant, whether it's something inside your house, a big house plant, a plant grouping like this, is just to take your finger and stick it in up to the first knuckle. And if the plant, or if the soil rather, feels moist, then you probably have enough water. If it feels moist down inside, you still probably have enough water. But if it's beginning to feel dry down in there at the tip of your finger, that far in, then that's the point at which you probably need to water again. Containers of this size really aren't going to take more than probably a half a cup or so of water to make them happy for, you know, once a week, once every other week, something like that would probably be about the maximum you'd need to do. So Kristen, thank you again for letting us use your vintage containers. She kind of says that she has an obsession with these. Thank you so much for lending us these. I hope you guys have, if you have questions about this process or about how that works, please post them in the comments. I would love to hear from you, love to know what your thoughts are on them, and if you've tried working on any at home. But now it's time for bourbon. So this also is a new to me bourbon that's called an American Single Malt from the Belmont Farm Distillery in Culpepper, Virginia. So we're doing kind of a local to us here in the state of Virginia pour this time. I don't know how long this distillery has been around, honestly, but this particular pour has been aged 3 years. It's entirely made of malted barley, so it is going to be a much different flavor than you know, the products that we have tasted with corn and rye and things like that. So it'll be interesting to see what this ends up tasting like. Good color. There's a nice dark caramelly color in the bottle. Let's see what it looks like in the glass. One thing that this company touts about their product is that it is distilled in pot stills as compared to column stills. Refers to the different shapes of the stills. A column still is one that can be pretty much continuously in production. A pot still is one that the distillate has to come out and then a new distillate put in for the process to start over. So it lends itself much better to small batches than a column would. All right, still good color in the glass. Look at that. Can you tell I've been working? I've got dirt all over my hands. It's a good thing it's not near the bourbon. Oh, that's nice. So there's like vanilla for sure. A little bit of like a honey flavor. That's interesting. It's a little sweeter, not much heat, kind of, I don't know how you describe that. Yeah, it's interesting. Definitely like some fruit elements, cherries maybe, like stone fruit. The vanilla for sure. I did read one review online that said, the reviewer said that it tasted like Cheerios in milk, that it reminded him of breakfast. Honestly, I can't think of anything about this that reminds me of breakfast anytime that I've ever had, but that's what that reviewer said. The finish is not very long. It definitely finishes kind of mid-mouth for me, which is not bad. You know, it's okay. That definitely wouldn't be one that I'd turn down, but it's not one I'm sure that I would rush right back to try again. But anyway, Belmont Farm Distillery in Culpepper, Virginia, American Single Malt. So try it, see what you think, and let me know. I guess that about wraps up this episode, you guys. I hope that you've enjoyed our look at indoor plant gardens with some beautiful vintage containers. Kristen, thank you again. And a pour from Belmont Farm in Culpepper, Virginia. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Be sure and hit the bell icon so that you'll be notified. Be sure and leave comments. I'd love to hear from you. So if you have questions or just want to give me some feedback, I'd love that as well. Until next time, cheers to you and to flowers every day. Take care.